Alright, so you want to build a race gate. Well, if you're not in a club and you need to get your own or potentially build something by yourself, then that can be quite daunting as well as expensive. So what I wanted to compile here today is just a couple of options of what you could build yourself just using hardware parts, as well as trying to go a little bit more on the affordable side of obtaining some of these materials. So on the left over here, we can start off with our just standard flag. You used just a little bit of heat to bend a 45-degree angle on the PVC rather than making a nicer curve. I found that it was a little bit easier to just make a straight 45. This is anchored in just using some rebar, so that's just pounded into the ground, and that holds decently well. This is a 3/4 inch PVC with some Housewrap that I used to build the fabric material. It's just adhered to itself. You could use tape, but I ended up using some 3M 90 spray adhesive, so that seems to work out fairly well. Over here we have a couple of different options or things that I've tried. This is using fiberglass road markers, so this is just standard stuff that you can get at pretty much any hardware store. Just be aware that this is, it's fiberglass, so when you're putting this into the ground you will get splinters, so make sure you wear gloves, otherwise that may be quite painful. I did obtain some material. This is just sewn, fairly poorly by me, but it's definitely something that can get fairly expensive if you're buying, like even by the yard, getting at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. Fabric can get really expensive very quick, not to mention, quite arduous to, sew all of this. So if you can procure your own, that is an option, but definitely opting more for the cheaper Housewrap was probably a little bit of a better option, especially since this is stuff that you're going to be beating up quite a bit with your FPV drones. So having something that's somewhat easier to replace is probably a better option. This is using three 72-inch driveway markers that I just kind of coupled together. You could use some 3D printed mounts, but I found that the stainless steel or metal tubing is a little bit more durable and will have less likelihood of breaking at the stress points whenever you bend this. Because it's a arch of 3 of these driveway markers, it's quite large, so comparable to some of these 5x5 gate openings, this yields a fairly decently sized round opening. So by surface area it is quite comparable, maybe a little bit larger. Definitely if you have to drive it into the ground a little bit more, you will lose a little bit more of that height, so just being aware of that is a concern. Now we have about 9 miles an hour wind right now, so as you can see, these fabric and fiberglass gates are bending quite a bit, so pretty much anything under 10 miles an hour will probably be fine, but once you start hitting that 9 to 10 plus miles an hour, these gates will start to bend, which will be quite troublesome if you're trying to fly through them. So just be aware of the portability versus the survivability to the wind kind of concern. So these are things that you should probably be thinking of. If you have very low winds in that particular day that you're flying, definitely being able to grab these fiberglass options are quite appealing. Versus if you needed something a little bit more sturdy, this is where we get into the PVC design. So this is using 1-inch PVC. You can opt for a 3/4, but I had 1 inch at hand. This is self-standing, so it's not staked into the ground. Now, one of the things that you will notice is even with the wind, this thing is not budging, but the Housewrap is definitely flapping around quite a bit. So being able to actually tape that down, or finding a good way to sort of make sure that the basic sails stay put is something that you have to consider as well. This is using that same spray adhesive, so it's fairly easy to put around. I just kind of did a quick line of spray adhesive, folded it onto itself. But if you do leave this cut edge right here, whenever you start getting strikes from your props, you will start to see fraying edges as well. So being able to tape this over itself or adhering it back to itself is probably something that might yield a couple better options. Be aware that this stuff is not bulletproof, so you will start seeing some of the fraying of the laminate here. Now this is some of the cheaper materials. If you pay for Tyvek or some of the higher quality stuff, this might last a little bit longer, but you know, you're paying more for it, so your mileage may vary. But yeah, all I did was take a 3 foot by 100 foot roll, which will make about 20 race gates, and then I just kind of cut it in half to make 1.5 foot segments or strips, fold it over itself, and then the rest is just using the same kind of multi-GP design for a 5 by 5 foot opening. So yeah, that's what we have here. All right, so here we have the race gates taken down. On the left we have the arch, so this was the 3 poles that are just attached end to end. In the middle we have that square gate, and on the right we have the standard square gate for multi-GP design. Some of the things I wanted to draw attention to is these pack up quite small, so you can essentially have a bundle of these in a handful. These are the joints that I was talking about earlier. This is a stainless steel pipe that is pretty easy to, so it's kind of like a tent pole design, so you can just slide it on, slide it off, fairly easy to accommodate, versus on the printed version, to get a 90-degree angle, well, this is plastic, so it's not going to be very durable. You'll also start seeing like cranking over an extended period of time. So if you're using PLA or any other somewhat more brittle or not outdoors friendly material, this will not last very long. But it's 3D printed, so you can print them by the hundreds, no big deal. But really the big consideration here is how these kind of pack up. So these are still sewn together, so they can just kind of become uncoupled. You can get a whole bunch of these, put them together in a single bundle, and you can just kind of carry them fairly easily around. So definitely quite portable. If you don't have a lot of wind, this is kind of my go-to option, just with the mind that if you do smack into them, they're gonna bend quite a bit as well, so they're quite compliant. Your drone will survive quite a bit as well, but also high probability that you're gonna start fraying the fabric and get some of this loose cloth stuck into your props, or your motors, so not a good day for cleaning. On the other side we have the standard PVC with the Housewrap. So this stuff definitely is quite a bit to carry around. This is for a single gate, plus the 2 legs if you don't want to like sit there anchoring stuff into the ground. So making it freestanding, definitely a little bit more of an option if you or if you're by yourself and you don't really own the property that you're going to be flying at. If you're out in a park or a field, or field. So this is making portables very, very important for this. But as you can imagine, if you're carrying a whole stack of these gates, maybe you have 5 or 10 of these gates that you need to put up, that's quite an ordeal. Now, I'm not against putting up rebar and grounding something into the ground. So if you do have your flags, like the 10-foot flags I was showing a little bit earlier, you pretty much have to get this anchored into the ground. Driving PVC into the ground isn't really sustainable, and definitely getting a self-standing option for it is probably not. It's going to be very wobbly, so staking this into the ground, just taking a hammer with you is going to be a must. But again, that's a lot more infrastructure, or a lot more setup time. So if you're spending an hour or so to set up all of your gates in a specific pattern and then taking them down, you're losing quite a bit of flight time. So making something that is semi-durable but portable is going to be kind of a equation that you have to think about. So this hopefully kind of breaks down some of the options of what you can use for drone gates. I will probably use a mixture of these two, but as a recreational pilot with only myself or a handful of friends, this is probably the option that I'll switch to. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll have plans for some of these materials, files for the 3D printed content, as well as a spreadsheet that kind of breaks down some of the costs using costs around me, but hopefully this can be something that you can translate to what's around you. All right, see you later.